Hello. So today we begin our very first Python tutorial, and in this tutorial I'll be teaching you about primitive variables and expressions. And so let's get on with it. So this particular window that you're seeing here is basically a Google Colab window. Normally in the earlier times, whenever we would have to learn Python, we will have to go through a lot of installations and everything. But now Google has provided us with this wonderful tool, which is freely available to anyone who has a Gmail account. So if you have a Gmail account, what you can do is you can simply go to Google Colab. You can just type Google Colab here, and you will have this particular site available to you here, and you can just click on new notebook. If you click on new notebook, you will have the same window open as I have, which you can later on save in your Google Drive. So if you have a Gmail account, you can very simply access this, and I believe everyone has a Gmail account. So there is no point in trying to install those softwares and unnecessarily waste space on your system. And they're also much slower here. It's much more faster and better. So it's always better to use Google Colab. All the files will be saved and won't be deleted. You can access them later on if you want from your Google Drive. So the whole initial process of how to install Python has been taken care of simply by Google Colab. You just go to the website and you click on a new notebook while being logged into your Gmail account, and everything will be fine. This is exactly what I've done here. So you can see this is the window that actually is opened here. So I want to tell you something about Google Colab first. So what happens is that Google Colab is basically two kinds of cell. This particular cell which I've written over here, primitive variable and expression, is actually a text cell. So if I click on this text, I will have another text open. So I can say demo cell. And in order to run this particular cell, what you need to do is that you need to press Control Enter and or Shift Enter, and you will basically go to the next cell. And then this is a code cell. You can again add another code cell by pressing like this. You can obviously delete them very easily. For example, you can just delete this particular demo cell. So it's very easy. There are two types of cell: code cell and text cell, that we are going to be most bothered about. And there will be a window over here on which there will be an option to connect, and you can easily connect that. Right now I'm already connected, so it's showing RAM and disk space and everything. And this is very simple. If you want to run a particular code, for example, if I were to say x is equal to 7 and then x, all you need to do is just press on this particular button. It will do some processing, and then you will have the output here. It's a very simple and easy environment to work with, and so that is what we will be using. You can change the name of the file from here at the top. And so really not many options to play with, especially if you're learning at the very initial stages. So that's why we will be using Google Colab. So now let's begin with the topics at hand, which is primitive variables and expressions. So what are primitives? So in Python, what we do is that we have this bang sign over hash sign, and this is basically a comment now. So if I were to sort of say what is uh, primitive, and then if I were to run this, nothing is going to happen, because this is basically comment section. Google Colab understand that I'm just trying to provide some information in this particular code. So what exactly is a primitive again? So something like say 45, and that's a primitive of int type. Okay, something like 4.2, that's a primitive of the float type, as you already understand this. And something within quotes, for example, hello, that is a primitive of str, or strings value, a combination of characters put together. Then there is also a boolean type. For example, if I were to say true, then this is what you call a bool type. But one thing you should remember is that here the t is in capital, so you just need to keep that in mind. So these are the kind of primitive values that you come across, values that are known to us to naturally exist. Okay, that is what you call primitive values, values which are naturally supposed to exist. Numbers, decimal number, true, false. You don't really need a computer to specifically tell you. These things come to us intuitively. So this is what it is. Now we come down to variable. What are variables in computer science? Why we need variables? So which is something like x is equal to 42, and then I say x, so we print this particular value. Now what are variables? Variables can be simply defined as a name that refers to a particular value. And why do we need that? Because as we move on in our journey of programming, we will realize that we will need to store a large number of values and then later on perform operations on them. So what really happens is that how do we actually store them? How much space we need to provide for storing them? This functionality is taken care by the concept of variables. When we define a variable, when I say x is equal to 43, we can also define it like this, okay? But I don't need to, because it is already understood by the Python interpreter. And this is something which is truly amazing about Python language, that it basically understands what value we are trying to save. So it will then save this kind of a value and provide the amount of space that is required to save an integer type in memory. I don't even need to write something like this. If I write something like this, as you can see, it starts giving an error. So this is what is not needed. And so this is how we actually define a variable. If I were to say something like y is equal to hello world, and if I were to then say y and run this whole thing all over again, you will see in the output I get hello world, but this time around I don't get to see x being printed, because when we are printing in an environment where we're not inside a particular file specifically, and we are not treating the code as a module, then what happens is that the code which is appearing at the end and which is asking to be displayed will be displayed, because we are not inside a particular file. Once we go inside a file, then things become different. Here we are just in an open environment trying and testing. So that's why the value of y gets printed. Okay, so now I would also like to explain to you a very small example where we will use expressions and variables together. I will say expressions and variables together. So what I will do is that I will just sort of take a piece of code, and I will use it here itself. So here it is. So there you see what we have done here is that uh, I've taken certain values. For example, I've created a variable called principal, rate of interest, number of years. So this is like the initial amount, interest rate, and number of years. And then I put those inside a while loop. So what exactly is a while loop? A while loop will continue to execute some operation upon certain values till this particular condition that I mentioned after the while keyword is proven to be false. So if I do this and then I perform a certain operation, I say that the principal will be 1 plus rate of interest, and then I multiply that with principal, and then I print those values, and then I increment year by +1. This is the line which actually will make this particular condition false, because once it keeps incrementing, eventually it will go beyond 5 and it will be false. So if I run this, you will see what happens. Here you go. You get the values of compound interest each year. So this particular expression basically contains both variables, primitive types, and these are expressions. For example, principal is equal to principal into 1 plus rate is in itself an expression, because it will itself give an output. So this thing itself gives an output. So this is very simple. I mean, there's no need to overcomplicate the whole thing. These are just the primitive types that are intuitively available to us. Variables are basically nothing but they just refer to some kind of an object which is itself of a particular type. And here we see we implemented a while loop. In this while loop, we are basically trying to carry out certain operations, and we are using both variables and expressions to get that job done. So this is how easy it is inside Python, and this was my first tutorial. So I hope you like it. Please do subscribe and share, and so till next video, thank you so much.